The warm afternoon air filled the historic hotel with a sense of calm, where time seemed to slow down, and every detail carried the weight of stories told long ago. Katherine, her eyes curious and observant, took in the ornate walls as she settled at a secluded table in the tea house, seeking a moment of peace during her trip. The muffled chatter, the clinking of teacups, and the delicate aroma of freshly brewed tea created an almost enchanted setting. Arthur, freshly returned from a walk through the quaint streets of the city, stepped into the room and noticed the limited seating. Spotting an empty seat next to Katherine, he approached, gesturing politely to ask if he could join her. With a shy nod, she agreed, unaware that this simple gesture would open the door to something much deeper. The initial awkward silence gradually transformed into curious glances and a tentative conversation. At first, their words were brief, each testing the waters. But soon they laughed over shared stories and coincidences. Katherine's welcoming smile revealed an adventurous spirit that contrasted with Arthur's quiet composure. He spoke of his travels and passion for history, while a hint of something deeper glimmered in his eyes, suggesting there was more to him than his polished demeanor. Minutes turned into hours, and the details of the room around them faded into the background. The world shrank to their shared table, where the tea sat forgotten as the hours passed unnoticed. There was a natural harmony between them, like an old melody echoing in their souls. For a moment, Katherine's heart skipped a beat, realizing the rare and unexpected connection growing between them. Arthur felt it too. In the amber glow of the late afternoon, he realized that this casual encounter was becoming something that would transcend the trip itself. Memories of a long-lost love surfaced like a shadow of nostalgia. Doubts whispered in the back of his mind about the meaning of giving in to the moment, but Katherine's presence silenced those fears, inviting him to live fully in the present. As the evening shadows began to stretch across the walls, the tea house glowed with a magical light, reflecting the aura of discovery between them. Smiles were exchanged like secrets, and their glances carried unspoken promises. Time seemed to pause, and in that shared space, an unspoken truth was clear. They had found something they didn't know they were looking for, sparking hope and longing in their hearts. Reality returned when the clock in the room chimed the hour. The conversation slowed, and a knowing silence settled between them, filled only with the awareness of what they had experienced. Katherine and Arthur said goodbye with smiles that spoke louder than words. There was something new, undefined yet present, that each knew they would carry with them. In the days that followed, Katherine and Arthur seemed drawn to each other by an invisible force. Each morning, they would meet without planning, as if by fate. They explored the city's streets, sharing a mutual curiosity that made every detail feel more vibrant and memorable. They strolled through squares filled with street performers, admired ancient architecture, and laughed at small coincidences, like a shop's name that recalled stories from their past. The hotel and its tea house became their meeting point, where the day began or ended, filled with shared memories amidst the aroma of fresh tea and delicate pastries. Arthur found himself recounting stories from his youth, dreams that had faded over time, and achievements that left a bittersweet taste. Katherine, her eyes sparkling with empathy, shared her passion for the arts, the colors and shapes that filled her life, and the challenges she faced to pursue her dreams. Time seemed to flow differently. Hours passed with a lightness Katherine hadn't felt in years. She caught herself smiling at the memory of their conversations, like the way Arthur furrowed his brow when he spoke seriously, or the sound of his laugh, which echoed like something she had always longed to hear. It was as if this encounter had awakened parts of herself that had long been dormant, bringing out the young adventurer she thought she had left behind. For Arthur, Katherine's presence was a breath of fresh air in his well-organized but quietly lonely life. He began to notice the subtle gaps in his existence, the empty spaces he'd never dared to fill. Seeing the world through Catherine's eyes made him want more than the routine and cold achievements of his career. She brought a light he didn't know he needed, and he found himself wishing the vacation would never end. The tea house, now a refuge, became more than just a physical place. It symbolized the time shared and the intimacy they built without haste. Each cup of tea sipped, each dessert tasted, held a precious memory. They would sit at their favorite table near the window, watching the city move outside as they lost themselves in deep conversations and comfortable silences. One day, after a particularly memorable afternoon exploring an artisan market and laughing together like old friends, Katherine found herself looking at Arthur with a mix of admiration and apprehension. Something in her chest tightened at the thought of the inevitable end of the trip. Arthur, though immersed in the happiness of the moment, also felt a subtle shadow lurking. The reality awaiting them loomed like a distant cloud, threatening to break the enchantment. As they returned to the hotel and shared one more evening in the tea house, the atmosphere grew heavier, filled with the awareness that their time together was limited. Yet the glances they exchanged that night held a silent promise, a mutual understanding that their connection was different, unique. Whatever the future held, the memories of that place and that summer would forever be etched in their minds. The final day of the trip arrived with a heavy air of melancholy, hanging like a mist over the hotel and its elegant, history-laden walls. Katherine woke early, her heart beating with a mix of gratitude and sadness. The pale morning sun cast soft shadows across her room, as if even it understood the weight of the moment. She ran her fingers over the light fabric of her dress, trying to soothe the anxiety rising in her chest. There was something in the air, an intuition that made her want to slow time down. Arthur, on the other hand, felt a restless emptiness as he packed his belongings. Each folded piece of clothing was a cruel reminder that in just a few hours, everything they had shared in the past days would be nothing but a memory. The echoes of shared laughter and whispered conversations in the hallways mixed with the sound of zippers closing on suitcases, each click resonating like a warning that this chapter was drawing to an end. He closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to recall Catherine's expression under the soft light of the tea house. Their meeting in the breakfast hall was initially silent, both aware that words, no matter how kind, would carry a note of farewell. Movements were slower, as if each gesture tried to hold on to time slipping away. Katherine, with a sad smile, tried to memorize every detail of Arthur, the way he held his cup, the deep gleam in his eyes when he looked at her. The hum of voices around them was muffled, a backdrop that highlighted the intensity of their moment together. They decided to take one last walk through the city, a silent goodbye to the places that had become part of their story. The streets, once filled with discoveries and laughter, now seemed to watch them in quiet observance, witnesses to a feeling that had blossomed unexpectedly and deepened with a natural ease. Katherine took a deep breath as they passed the small square where they had once sat to watch street performers, feeling a pang as she remembered the spontaneous laughter they shared there. Arthur, fighting against the sadness, tried to focus on the things he wanted to say, but the words remained trapped, unable to express what he felt. He knew this moment did not allow for empty promises, and the future was a blank page offering no guarantees. He looked at Katherine, his eyes reflecting a blend of tenderness and resignation, as if they both knew they stood at the edge of something they could not control. Fate had brought them together, but life would separate them, at least for now. As the sun began to set, they returned to the hotel, now bathed in the last golden rays of daylight. They sat in the tea house one final time, unhurried, as if prolonging the moment could make it infinite. The breeze coming through the open window carried the familiar scent of garden flowers and the distant murmur of conversations, amplifying the feeling of an imminent end. The silence between them was filled with memories and unspoken emotions. When they said their goodbyes, Katherine and Arthur shared one last deep look, full of understanding and something they didn't dare name. They parted without promises, but with a subtle hope that perhaps one day their paths would cross again. And as they walked away, the sound of their luggage wheels rolling on the ground echoed like a final heartbeat, sealing that chapter of their lives with a bittersweet and eternal note. Time moved on with the relentless consistency of clock hands, taking with it the intensity of emotions felt that summer. Back in her hometown, Katherine immersed herself in her waiting routine. Her small craft workshop, always her refuge, now thrived with new ideas and clients. The vibrant colors of paint and the patterns of her creations served as an escape from the memories of that brief but impactful encounter. Occasionally, a pang of longing would surface, but she would push it aside with a serene smile, knowing life had to go on. Arthur returned to his legal career with the same discipline and dedication as before. The cases, meetings, and long hours in the office filled his days, leaving little room for memories of the past. He knew there was something different in how he saw life after that trip, a silent sense that a part of him had been awakened. Yet, reality demanded focus, and he didn't let the echoes of summer interfere with his ambitions. Instead, he channeled the nostalgia into renewed determination to achieve the success he had always pursued. The years piled up, turning moments into memories and smiles into faded photographs. Katherine found a partner with whom she shared laughter and challenges. Together they built a family, their days full of voices and little hands clutching hers. The nights, however, still carried whispers of that distant summer, like a breeze that murmurs forgotten secrets. She didn't dwell on the past. Her present was full and real, but there was an understanding that certain feelings simply remain, stored away in a corner of the heart. For Arthur, life also moved forward. The man who had once shared a tea table with Katherine now found himself a respected attorney, married to a woman with a strong spirit and children who inherited his determination. His professional achievements filled him with pride, but there were nights when, staring out his office window, he allowed himself a brief sigh. It was in those moments, as the city slept and silence enveloped him, that the ghost of that summer visited him, carrying with it a bittersweet sense of what could have been. The summer Katherine and Arthur shared became one of those unspoken secrets, a story they both cherished but didn't let interfere with the course of their lives. There were no letters exchanged, no messages over the years. The farewell they shared was final, and the promises left unsaid were honored with the dignity of those who understand the finiteness of certain moments. The past settled among the layers of their experiences, leaving only the soft trace of a smile that surfaced unexpectedly. Katherine dedicated her life to her passions, teaching crafts to generations who came and went. Her laughter echoed through the workshop, and every piece she made was a celebration of her journey. Arthur, on the other hand, became a mentor to young lawyers, sharing not only his knowledge but also lessons on recognizing the beauty in unexpected moments. Both built different but equally meaningful legacies, their stories intertwining with many others who passed through their lives. Yet, fate is a master of keeping surprises. Years passed, and the memory of that summer, which for so long seemed like a forgotten photograph, remained there somewhere. It was only a matter of time before the lines that had drifted so far apart would start to curve again, drawing a path that would lead them to an encounter they could never have predicted. Decades passed with a serene rhythm, and Katherine and Arthur followed their respective paths without regrets or laments. Time did its work, shaping their lives in ways they had never imagined. Katherine, now a woman whose presence exuded strength and serenity, felt pride in the journey she had taken. Her workshop had grown and become a community landmark, a place where dreams were nurtured and shared. The family she built expanded, and her days were filled with warm gatherings and family celebrations. There was love, laughter, and the peace that only years could bring. Arthur, in turn, became a well-respected name in the legal world. The firm he helped build thrived and attracted young talent, inspired by his ethics and dedication. He too built a family, watching his children grow and forge their own paths, feeling the deep satisfaction of witnessing life continue. Mornings started with strong coffee and the familiar sound of rustling newspaper pages, and evenings were spent in silent reflection, shared with his wife by his side. Katherine and Arthur's lives were not marked by the shadow of a lost love. They did not let the memories of that distant summer define their stories. Instead, they kept the experience with the fondness reserved for rare gems, appreciating it when it surfaced but not letting it interfere with the reality they had built. The past blended with the present, not as a burden but as a reminder that some moments don't need to last to be special. In her tranquil afternoons, sitting on her porch, Katherine watched the trees sway in the wind and felt genuine peace. The colors of the flowers she planted reflected her vibrant and creative personality. Looking at the photographs of her children and grandchildren scattered around the room, she knew she had lived fully. There were lines on her face, but each one told a story, a victory, a shared laugh. If the memory of that summer ever resurfaced, it was with the sweetness of a well-lived chapter, not a longing that hurt. Arthur, during moments when the house was quiet and the night brought a touch of nostalgia, would occasionally relive the memory of Katherine. It was not sorrow, but a subtle smile that would appear as he reflected on how life has a way of surprising us. He took pride in what he had built and the man he became, the challenges he faced, the cases he defended, and the people he inspired were the legacy he left behind. And though that summer was just a fragment, he understood that the essence of what he felt never truly disappeared. It simply mingled with the other layers of his existence. For both of them, time was not an enemy but an ally that gave them the opportunity to grow and flourish. The memories of their youth remained tucked away but did not influence the years that followed. Love, joy, and even losses were experienced in their full intensity, enriching their journeys. That summer encounter became a landmark, but not the center of their lives. Both knew how to find happiness in the subtleties and details of daily life. But like a melody that sleeps only to awaken in an unexpected chord, fate held a surprise. The past, calm in its place, was about to become a bridge to something new. Life, with its unique ability to bend the lines of time, was preparing to intertwine Katherine and Arthur's stories once more, in an encounter as casual as the first but infinitely more meaningful. Time, which had charted its own course for Katherine and Arthur, was setting the stage for something new. It was an especially mild summer when Katherine decided to gift herself a trip back to that charming city she had visited many years before. Now 65, she sought the tranquility of cobblestone streets, the murmur of fountains, and the gentle warmth of the sun. The city remained almost unchanged, like a time capsule, and each corner evoked forgotten memories that made her smile. Arthur, meanwhile, arrived in the city for entirely different reasons. A legal conference brought him back to a place he had only revisited in his thoughts. The man who always sought control and predictability didn't know life had a surprise in store for him. Walking through the narrow streets, lost in memories and the distant chime of bells, he never expected fate to play with the carefully drawn lines of his life. The meeting happened so casually that it seemed orchestrated by an unseen force. Katherine, in a light dress swaying in the breeze, paused in front of an antique store to look at a window display full of delicate items. Arthur, passing on the other side of the street, noticed the familiar silhouette. His steps faltered for a moment, and a wave of recognition and surprise washed over him. It felt as if time had crumbled in an instant, revealing a connection he thought long buried. Catherine's heart raced when their eyes met. The initial surprise was quickly replaced by a warmth that spread through her body. Arthur, always calm and rational, felt an old emotion emerge like an old friend. He approached with a hesitant smile, a mix of disbelief and joy coloring his face. No words were needed at that moment. Their reunion spoke for itself. They walked through the streets together without plans or haste, as if no time had passed since they last shared those sidewalks. The city seemed to align with their pace, each corner bringing a new memory, a new whisper of summer. Katherine spoke of the adventures and challenges she had faced, and Arthur listened with a smile, absorbing every detail, every expression, as if trying to preserve it forever. The shadows of the afternoon stretched, and the golden light enveloped the city, creating an almost cinematic scene. They sat on a stone bench under an ancient tree, the sound of the fountain behind them lulling their conversation. Arthur shared stories of his career, of the family he built, but his eyes told a deeper story, an emotion that sparkled in them. Katherine, with a soft laugh, remarked that she never thought life would bring them back to that place. The reunion was more than a coincidence. It was proof that life, with all its unpredictability, knew how to reunite what seemed lost. The two felt their hearts beat in sync, a silent understanding that this moment, so unexpected, had a purpose. It was as if time had stopped to remind them that certain feelings, even dormant, could be reignited with the same intensity as before. The sun still hung low in the sky as Katherine and Arthur resumed their walk through the city streets, now at a slower, more measured pace, as if they wanted to savor every second. The conversation flowed naturally, blending old memories with new updates on their lives. Each exchanged smile brought back memories of that long-ago summer, but with a new layer of maturity, as if time hadn't just passed but prepared them for this reunion. When they passed the square where they had once watched street performers decades before, Katherine paused for a moment. Her eyes roamed the familiar space, now quieter but still holding the essence of her youth. Arthur, noticing her gaze, felt a wave of nostalgia, a memory that brought both joy and a touch of melancholy. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them filled with everything that didn't need to be said. Arthur allowed himself a brief moment of introspection. For years he had let the memories of that summer rest in an untouched corner of his mind, a memory that sometimes emerged during quiet nights. Now, with Katherine by his side, he felt a rediscovery in his chest, a breath of life that made his pulse quicken. That feeling he thought belonged to the past was there, alive and intense as ever, perhaps even stronger now with the awareness of what it meant. Katherine felt something similar. It was as if each conversation and each step they took together made her revisit parts of herself that had long been dormant. The easy laughter they shared, the glances exchanged, made her realize that the essence of who she was during that summer still lived within her, blended with the lines and stories that the years had given her. It wasn't an attempt to relive the past, but an understanding that some parts of life remain with us, ready to be rediscovered. Time seemed to move with a rare lightness that day. They sat at a small cafe overlooking the square, the golden reflections of the sun casting long shadows across the ground. The smell of coffee and the city's sounds provided the perfect backdrop for a conversation that grew deeper. Katherine and Arthur shared stories of their families, spoke of the challenges and joys they had experienced. With each word, the connection between them strengthened, like a bridge that had stood the test of time and distance. Arthur looked at Katherine with a blend of admiration and something else, something he dared not name just yet. He noticed how she listened intently, her eyes shining with the same curiosity and kindness he remembered. For a moment he felt a shiver as he realized how much that day had changed something in him. Life had taught him to value moments, and this one, without a doubt, was one he wanted to remember forever. As the afternoon turned to evening, the city lights began to glow, reflecting in Catherine's eyes like tiny stars. She felt her heart lighten, but at the same time, a sweet weight of recognition settled. There was something different about being there with Arthur after all they had lived through separately. It wasn't just a casual encounter, but the rediscovery of a flame that had never fully extinguished. In the shared silence under the city's soft lights, they both knew they had something precious before them, a rare and priceless second chance. The days that followed were marked by meetings that seemed to happen naturally, as if the city itself had conspired to bring Katherine and Arthur together. The routine they once knew was transformed by moments shared. Morning walks, impromptu lunches at small cafes, and conversations that stretched into the afternoon, touching on topics that brought them closer. Their time together was a mix of rediscovery and the creation of new memories, as if each moment cemented what they felt. Amid her unexpected happiness, Catherine's heart was torn between the thrill of the present and the caution the years had taught her. Life had shaped her to make careful decisions, each step taken with the confidence of someone who knows the value of what they've built. But with Arthur, the sense of freedom and spontaneity returned, challenging the comfort of stability. There was a new spark in her chest, a quiet desire to believe that, even after everything, it was still possible to start anew. Arthur felt something similar. Always meticulous in his decisions, he felt the balance of his life being challenged by Catherine's presence. It wasn't an abrupt change but a gradual transformation, a new perception of what truly mattered. The successful man he had become found himself questioning whether achievements were as meaningful as the pure moments of connection he shared with her. Thoughts of the future began to emerge, filled with possibilities that once seemed like dreams. One afternoon, as they walked through a park shaded by centuries-old trees, Katherine allowed herself to think beyond the present moment. The breeze carried the scent of flowers and the laughter of children playing nearby. Arthur, beside her, commented on how time seemed to have given them a new chance. Their eyes met, and there, amidst the simplicity of that day, an unspoken decision was made. Both knew that what they had was not an echo of the past, but something that, with maturity and understanding, could become part of their lives. Days turned into weeks, and the initial hesitation gave way to certainty. Katherine, always cautious with her emotions, realized she could not ignore what she felt. Arthur, in turn, set aside the barriers he had built over the years, allowing the present to touch him more deeply. It wasn't a simple choice but a conscious decision to follow a path that felt right. The city, with its stone streets and colorful houses, witnessed the first steps of a love being reborn. The novelty was not just about reliving what they had but building something new, something real. Katherine and Arthur found themselves more open, more honest about the fears, achievements, and pains that shaped them. There was no rush, only the desire to explore this new phase together, with the calmness of those who knew what they wanted. Each meeting, each moment, reinforced their decision not to let this chance slip away. They knew that life, despite its unpredictability, sometimes offered second chances worth embracing. As the sunset painted the sky in warm colors, they sat on a bench overlooking the city. The silence between them was comforting, a confirmation that the choices they had made up to that point were right. The future was still a blank page, but the present, that exact moment, was filled with hope and silent promises. Both felt ready for whatever came next, confident that this time, nothing would keep them apart. Dawn brought a sense of renewal. The city, bathed in the soft light of early morning, seemed to witness the new chapter Katherine and Arthur were ready to write. Catherine's heart beat with a mix of excitement and serenity. She allowed herself to look in the mirror, seeing the features marked by a well-lived life, but with a renewed sparkle in her eyes. She felt as if she had reclaimed a part of herself she thought was lost. Arthur, meanwhile, prepared for the day with a rare feeling of anticipation. For so long driven by deadlines and accomplishments, he now found himself eager for the simple joy of being with Katherine. Life, which often demanded quick and precise decisions, now gifted him with the possibility of choice, a choice he made wholeheartedly. The peace he felt was a reminder that not all endings are final, and that some stories can be continued. Their meeting that morning was marked by smiles and looks that held the weight of everything they had lived through, both apart and together. They walked through the square, now bustling with the murmur of people starting their routines. Voices, laughter, and the sound of footsteps on old stones formed a melody that accompanied them as they walked hand in hand. It was a simple gesture, but one that meant the world to both. Their plan for the day was symbolic. They returned to the tea house that, many years before, had been the setting for their first conversations and laughter. The place seemed untouched by time, with the same cozy atmosphere and familiar aromas that now awakened vivid memories. They sat at a table by the window, where the golden light danced over the porcelain. The details of that day echoed the past, but with the significant difference that now they were ready for what came next. Between sips of tea and moments of shared silence, Arthur turned to Katherine, his eyes reflecting a decision that had matured over the past days. No more hesitation was needed. He wanted that moment, that union, to be more than a chapter in their lives. He wanted it to be the beginning of a story they would continue to write together. Katherine, noticing the intensity of his gaze, felt her heart race. She knew what was coming and was ready. Arthur's proposal was simple yet full of meaning. The few words he spoke carried a solid promise of companionship and love. Katherine, with tears glistening in her eyes, nodded. The emotion was tangible, a mix of relief, joy, and gratitude for a second chance that many would never get. The decision to marry wasn't just symbolic, but a real commitment to embrace life and all its uncertainties together. In the days that followed, the city seemed to be infused with a special energy, as if even the streets and old buildings shared in Katherine and Arthur's happiness. The preparations were simple, as the meaning was more important than grandeur. Friends and family were surprised but couldn't help but notice the glow in both of them, as if a new beginning had restored their youth and hope. Throughout this story, we witnessed how life, with all its twists and turns, can surprise us when we least expect it. Katherine and Arthur reminded us that moments of true connection aren't erased by time but kept as seeds that, given the right circumstances, can bloom again. This journey was a testament that second chances can appear unexpectedly, and that, no matter how much time has passed, it is possible to rediscover joy, companionship, and love. Their reunion wasn't mere coincidence, but proof that life always holds surprises for those brave enough to believe and start anew. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories celebrating the complexities and beauties of life and love. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates, and share this video with friends and family to spread messages of hope and renewal. Let's continue exploring stories together that make us dream, reflect, and remember that sometimes love finds its way, even after many years.